Well, good afternoon. It's such an honor to be part of this very special Context Art edition. So thank you, Ellie and Liane and the rest of the team for inviting us. And also I'm really excited because I am here to talk about user-centric storyteller with with two very inspiring people, with Rafa Pavon, who is creative director and producer VR AR for Atlas 5, Jaunt, and Future Lighthouse, and he's working in really popular and really insightful pieces such as Gloomy Eyes, Atomo, Melita, and Fragments. And also with Jimmy Cheng, who is the director of content for Iconic Engine, focused on VR content licensing and distribution between studios and telecoms. So thank you both for joining. We are all joining from different parts of the world, so this is, I guess, one of the benefits of this edition. And just very briefly, storytelling for VR, this is one of my main interests and passions. As per any other medium, I think it remains the secret sauce that can take this industry to the next level, right? From the wow effect to the need of it. And actually, this is the whole reason why 3 years ago I started my own company, Garage Stories, which is an open innovation lab to foster the development of emerging media. And basically we organize labs and workshops around the world while we bring the creative community together. And during all this time we have been working on developing a methodology that helps us bring all these creative minds. Most of them, they come from different backgrounds, from designers to storytellers, but also developers, etc. So essentially the methodology we have developed is not to tell anyone what's the right way to do it, but actually which are the right questions to ask yourself as a creator when you want to start your own VR story. So I am really excited to actually have the opportunity to have you both here, because I think most of the right questions that we need to ask end up coming back to the user, right? To understand who is our user, what do they need, what do they feel, and to craft these experiences, not just inside the experience, the content, but also the whole experience, and how do they discover the content, and how they go through it. So welcome. If you guys want to briefly also introduce each other before we start with some questions.
Should I go first, or Rafa, you want to go first?
See you first.
Right. Hi everyone, I'm Jimmy from Iconic Engine, and I actually started to do content licensing and distribution since the end of 2018. And before, I was nothing related to VR. My background is more like, operation between the headquarters and our subsidiaries, because before I was working for Digital Domain. And then way before that, before 2016, I was like doing operations for casinos and cruise ships. So my background was nothing related to VR or media at all. The reason why I stepped into VR and also content distribution is actually interesting, because I joined Iconic Engine, and at that time we were already starting to supporting Deutsche Telekom and also Orange to develop their VR platform. And then we also received the request from these telecoms. Basically is that they say, we have a platform and we really need to find good VR contents to license. And we actually realized from a telecom's perspective, I think it is harder for them to directly reach out to all the studios at one time, because we actually understand most of the studios, each of them maybe have like 1 to 3 contents. Like very few studios have like a really big catalog. So if a telecom really wants to do the licensing by themselves, basically that will cost them a lot of time and manpower to do back and forth negotiation, especially the legal process with the telecom is always a little bit tricky and heavy loading. So that's actually why I jump in, and then I started to, prepare the business model that I want to do, and I pitched to studios. And until now, I'm very happy that, the distribution is actually, starting to have like good feedback that coming back from multiple telecoms. So I'm still looking for content, and this is what I do, and I will jump into more details later. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, in my case, I come more from a creative background. I did my best to be a filmmaker for about 7 years without success. But I did a lot of like experiments with technology, experiments with interactivity. And so I was feeling like a bit uncomfortable with the format before I suddenly in 2014, 2015, I met a friend of mine, Nicolas, who was starting to shape the idea of a VR studio, and he took me to his studio just to have a drink. And I tried a VR headset, and we talked a lot. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. I couldn't stop thinking about the new medium that I just saw and the potential that I just saw. And we start working together, and I realized when he founded Future Lighthouse, that suddenly everything was a creative opportunity in VR, and everything was like I was surrounded by unanswered questions, which was a lot more exciting than when I was in film. So I have this thing that I call the contact moment, which is based on the film Contact, when she's in a spaceship and everything is really, it's like there's friction constantly, and she cannot, like, she's moving, and then suddenly she's released from the seat, and she's starting to float. And for me, that was the moment where I started to explore VR after 7 years doing film. It was like, suddenly there's an open field. I could question things and find answers. And yeah, and accidentally, I happened to have some more success than in film.
Well, thank you so much. This is really, really an honor to be able to be discussing this with you. And actually, the reason why I got into VR is because, strangely, because I was working in the traditional film industry, I ended up in Silicon Valley instead of Hollywood. And at the beginning, I really felt like an alien. And then I started realizing that actually big companies like Google were opening their own film studio labs where they were bringing technology into it. And I was like, such an alien to technology. But then when I realized that basically what it was doing is like multiplying the options that you can actually have on telling stories, that's really what made it for me. So, okay, talking about VR, because as you said, there is a lot of questions, but not really a definite answer. We are still, like, in a way, the industry is growing. And I think that's what's interesting and exciting for most of us. So based on your experience till now, what will you say that works in VR, especially from a user standpoint? What's in it from them? Like, what do you think that's the things that are working better and engaging more with audiences?
Well, since the beginning, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made as a filmmaker in the beginning, and now for me, it's like one of the main rules in VR, is the fact that you need to recognize and acknowledge the user. For me, that's what makes VR. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Sometimes it's passive, sometimes it's active, but the user has to be something, someone there. It has to be part. It cannot be an afterthought. So for me, that makes me something like strong. And then there's, as we define the language, which is probably going to take us a lot more, there's some concepts that are really important for VR that are kind of alien for other mediums, which is not all mediums, but the concepts of immersion. It's something new that we're still exploring. Well, it's not new for theater, for example. It's not new for video games, but and then the concept of space, how you relate to the space around you, is something that is in VR. It's a new dimension also. And then the concept of presence, that is also explored in video games and some types of theater. But there's something there in that cocktail of elements that is kind of like the core of VR for me.
From my perspective, I want to say when I jump into VR, it's because I know that I need to handle distribution for Iconic Engine, and I need to know what telecoms want. But at first, I didn't understand anything about VR, and I only tried like a few pieces when I was working with Digital Domain. So the first thing that I started to do is I actually watched the entire old junk catalog like within a week. And then I try to find all the content that I can find from online, or some of them I just directly, pay on the Steam and somewhere else. basically is to try to, get more ideas about what is VR, and to kind of like train myself to see what are the contents I feel they're great, what are the contents I feel they are not really working. And then after I, started to talk to telecoms, basically I realized one thing is, from many telecoms perspective at the beginning, when they start to, license VR content, when they start to curate content, they also don't really know what they want, because they are also new to this industry, just like me. Like we all jumped in just like all of a sudden, but not like because we were creating contents or we already understand VR, so we are doing the VR content distribution and licensing. I think after running distribution for 1.5 years and complete multiple deals from China, Korea, France, Germany, and also like Taiwan, I think the results that I really realized is like we can exclude like extreme sports or content that is related to space or related to like underwater or travel. I think these couple genres that we all understand people will definitely enjoy, is because like normally those are the places or the ideas that we don't have the chance to experience. So when people jumps in watching the content, they definitely will just look everywhere, and they always feel exciting because that is something that they will never do. But for the rest of the contents that we are actually, seeing everywhere, no matter from Gloomy Eyes, Battle Scar, Mechanical Souls, for like, the Great Sea. I think for all these type of contents, no matter it's, fiction or sci-fi or pure animation entertainment, I think the reason why these contents will really work in VR is because when they are designing the content, they already thought about it. Like, we are human and we are designed that normally we just look, our POV normally is like 210 degrees. And when we hear something, then we look back. So our nature behavior is like, we only look the front or left and right. We normally don't look back. Like even we drive a car, we will use a mirror and then to see what's happening at the back. But normally you don't do that unless you need to make a turn or you need to make a, harsh break. So why people wants to watch VR? What is the difference? What kind of content that works? It's actually very simple. When end user that they start to watch VR content, normally within like 1 minute, they will start to say, yeah, this content is awesome. Oh, this content is boring. I think the main difference between great and not great is very simple. Do you really have a concept that this is a world or story that end users really need to use VR so they can get a better understanding, so they can be more immersed into the content, such as like The Great Sea. It's a great sci-fi and fiction, and the writer is so good. The way they execute the project is actually that you go into the world and you really immerse yourself, that you feel that you are also on the planet, you are actually participating in the story. So you feel you are not looking to the story as an outsider, like when we are watching a movie or a short form traditional film. And when I'm talking to telecoms, when they are curating contents, they're also trying to define what kind of contents they want. I think that is the first thing that they will, watch the content, they really do, and then they try to understand the content. The next thing they do is like they try to, get an idea or a balance between their end users and also the content that I represent, to see are these contents really, has a relation or connection with their end users. Because sometimes when we jump into a VR story, if the story is really, really niche, even though it designs very well, people still will, feel like I really don't know what's happening inside of the story. Then they start to feel boring, and then the content normally will just stop there, and then people quit. So when telecom decides the contents that they want to license, the first thing is they to see the concept, the designs, the frames, and also is it really immersive? Is it really that you go inside and then you will start to want to explore the world, the story. And then the second thing is they will start to see if the story is actually really relate to their end users or their culture. That actually will be a plus, because a lot of end users that telecoms approach, they never have a chance to really watch VR before. So they want to provide a really good experience or stories that actually can attract them to stick with the platform, to enjoy the content. Otherwise, we still will lose those new end users after they watch maybe 1 or 2 content. Yep.
Marta, we cannot hear you.
Your microphone is weird.
There's like a hum.
It's like bzzz.
Like a bus. We hear like a bus coming from you, so maybe you want to switch the microphone?
Or you leave the room and then, you know, reactivate Zoom again. Maybe that will fix.
Oh, yes, no. There's a zoom. There's like a weird sound.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, from the far, but
All right, sorry, guys and everyone listening. So yeah, I just wanted to very quickly say that this thing that you said, Jimmy, that probably the best pieces are the ones that are really designed having the whole experience of the user in mind. Are actually, this reflection is what made us change a lot our labs, because at the beginning, the first labs we organized were just around storytelling. So how do we tell stories? And actually, it was quite hard to find answers until we started thinking, okay, but first of all, which stories do we need to tell? And then in a way, once we knew the stories, we knew much more about the user, and then the storytelling was much easier to figure out. But I'm really interested, Rafa, you come more from the creative side. So I'm really interested in learning more about your process and how do you come up with concepts? How do you design the stories? Like what sparks the light for you?
Well, it's certainly not like there's not like a format for every project, and that's one of the great things about VR, is that if each project has a complete different set of variables. But I think there's some common things that I've seen in different projects that I've been part of, and also that I know. The first one is something that I do almost like naturally, and I was doing before when I was in film and everything, is that, but I think in VR is even more relevant, is that I start by assuming that users don't really give a damn about VR. No one actually like cares about us, or no one is kind of like queuing or camping to see our next piece, which basically means that we need to make a big effort to make the stories twice as good as other mediums to succeed. We need to make sure that those stories, that average is not going to work because people don't care. Average would work on a industry like film, in which you already have the distribution model, so people go to the cinemas, there's no friction there, they go, they see the film, they might like it or not. In VR, we need to make a massive effort for that, and that's something that a lot of people forget. So with that approach in mind, that it's something that I try to push, it helps me push a lot, everything. I think the first step is questioning everything, and this is my favorite thing of VR. That nothing is set in stone. The format is not set in stone. The who's the character, who's the story, like what's the story. The expectations of people are not set, so you're free, which means that you can question things. Sometimes you don't need to do things in the same way as you've been doing it forever. It's like sometimes something really easy, you just need to question it and find new answers. And that helps a lot if you do it in the beginning. So everything else, by understanding the technology, the user, the space, where are people gonna experience it? Is it like a theater? Is it a cultural space? Is it like at their homes? Those things are not defined yet in VR, which is bad for the distribution model, but it's great for creativity. So I think questioning is by far the first thing like that you need to do, which is, I think it happens in every medium. Then researching is also really important in the beginning, mainly because the mistakes in VR are really expensive, and it's very likely that someone else has made those mistakes before, or have tested those like mechanics or the locomotion or the system or even the storytelling. It's like by watching other stories, you realize what works well. And this happened. I remember this happened a couple of times in the history of VR, but I remember one of the first situations where I realized what kind of research was so important in VR is I remember watching a piece by Oculus Studios called Henry the first time, I don't know, like in 2015 or 16, whenever. And it's a beautiful animation piece, and it's like what you expect by having really good animators, really good storytellers. But there was one thing that I remember that shocked me a lot, is when Henry looked at me. And I think a lot of people talk about that moment as the moment you realize you were part of the space. You have presence there. And there was the realization that you need to acknowledge the user to make it present. Things like that happen every time you see a really good piece. Sometimes there's like little moments that you might not even see if you're not looking for them, but that help you build better stories. So researching is very important in VR if you don't want to make the same mistakes. And then I think this is not a guide at all, because there's a lot of variables, as I say, but there's 4 things that I think we need to question more than anything in general. The first one is the user, which is always, as in anything in VR, is the core of everything. Who's the user? Why is the user doing that? What is how do they understand the piece, or what's the user experience? Then the story. This is not new. I think the stories have to be strong in every medium. The arc, there needs to be an arc. The user needs to understand the world, understand what's their agency there. Then the space around it. What can I do with the space? What can I interact with? How can I move around? How can I, how far are things or close? And then the technology is it the best use of the technology? What are the new technologies that are coming that might make me, that might help solve the problems I have? So I think that's like a really shallow way to describe a process, but I think it's common to a lot of projects.
One thing that catch my attention is that, for what you say, what's more exciting about you is the fact that by default, whether we're talking about cinema or like, you always have the same format, right? Like whichever movie you're watching, you're sitting on a chair looking at screen, either it's at home, a movie theater, and so on. Same goes for books. Like you have a book and you read, either it's a Kindle or whatever. But what's more exciting for you about this new language, this new medium, is that you can actually invent that format, right? So you can, once you understand the user, then you can also decide how he will interact with the content and how he will experience that. And of course, there is one aspect of teaching the user. So I have one question for you and one that relates to Jimmy. My question is, how do you plan for teaching the user? Because maybe in that reality and that format that you are creating, there is new rules that don't apply in real life, so they need to learn in order to enjoy the experience to the fullest. And also my next question for Jimmy is going to be that, do you have any rules in which kinds of formats do you take on in order to distribute? Because they might have very different strategies. But first one is for you, Rafa. How do you plan on when it comes to educating the user to enjoy the experience?
Well, first, starting from the assumption that they don't give a damn about VR, most users are trying to take the headset off as soon as possible. So there's a whole process called onboarding, which is also part of the story, part of the process, and you could do it really well or really bad, and that could define the whole experience. In the onboarding, you give the users the tool they need to understand the story, to know what is expected from them, and basically the user is, when they get into a headset, they are full of questions. Usually it's like, why am I here? What is expected from me? What can I do? and who am I, or what's happening around me. So those are the questions that you need to answer in a lot of different ways. And this is one of these things that there's no like a format, but you need to be really creative. And this is something that some of the best experiences, they give the user those tools really well in a gentle way. So the user is engaged from the beginning, and then everything else is easy. So the onboarding defines the whole thing in how you train the user.
And coming to you, Jimmy, so because it's so wide, the formats that a piece can take, do you have any restrictions on what do you take? Do you plan a specific strategy for each piece? How do you deal with this?
Okay, I think I'll circle back to the previous question that Rafael was talking about. You know, how to design the concept and also how to educate users. I think because I'm coming from a distribution perspective, so I'm not really creative. I want to say is when we are actually choosing content, basically what we do is like first I will watch it, and then the second thing is like I need to think. What is this concept's audience? And actually that really relates to why the creator wants to create this project. During the past, I saw many projects, the concept is really good, but the problem is I don't realize, or I don't think that they actually have a really confirmed audience that they are targeting. A lot of people always say, I think my content is really family friendly, that everybody will like it, everybody will watch. But the problem is, even though I'm distributing Taiwan created content to Taiwanese, still some Taiwanese will say this is boring, I don't want it, and maybe only teenagers will like it, and then maybe for really young generation or elder generation, they will hate it. So I was actually discussing with a lot of creators, and also some of the good friends such as like Antoine and Liz. We were actually saying that when we are coming to design a project, I think the first is, okay, I do have a concept, very rough, very briefly, not even polished yet. But the next question that the creator or the director should have is, okay, who is my target audience? You really need to narrow down your target audience to a very specific group. It can be multiple groups, because I know some of the genres and concept can, cross over, different types of audience. But you really need to narrow down for like, okay, this concept is purely for Westerns or for Asians. And then if right now you say, okay, this concept is for Asians, this is really for like, Chinese speaking people, or this is for Japanese culture, or that is for India culture. And then you really narrow down, and then you use this target audience, and then to study what are the user behavior of these audience, such as like if you're doing an extreme sports content, such as like baseball. Okay, why these people they love watching baseball, and what is the way they enjoy baseball game, or when they enjoy a baseball content, and then you use that to basically reflect back to like your concept, polish it, and then to define how you really execute it. That mostly can help you to really, when you goes to distribution, it can actually be a clear path that even the buyers, the curators of the telecoms, that they can actually really feel that you do know where your target audience is. So they can, start to think, yes, we do have a lot of this kind of users, inside of a territory. And then this will be the content that we take, because they have massive end users from their, mobile phone subscribers and, home cable subscribers. They know how to do promotions or communication to those people, that we have a VR platform and we have specific and certain type of content that, comes to these type of users. And that actually will let these end users, when they watch content, they're watching something that they have interest. When they have interest, they definitely will say, oh, this media is cool, this is something I want to try more. And then eventually they will try more content, and then they maybe become the VR user that we want. And then circle back to Marta, the question. Right now, the project I take is purely, I would say 99% like traditional 360. I know 6-off is a trend, interactive is important. And I know for most of their project, when they're doing financing, or when they're doing, designing their concept or format, they normally want to go for 6-off and interactive first. Less people that they want to do a pure traditional 360 content. I think that's great, because that is really the trend, and also that actually brings the end user to go into more immersive. The reason why I only take complete 360 traditional format is because these telecoms platform, they are not that mature yet. Such as like the platform we provide to Deutsche Telekom and Orange. Our player, our backend system can directly digest like an 8K content, not a problem, stream directly, just, you know, depends on the end user's bandwidth. Do they have a really good Wi-Fi or internet so they can stream up to 4K, or it will automatically downgrade to like, you know, 4K or even 2K HD. Some of the telecoms, they're also thinking about that they want to, you know, start to promote some headsets, but we actually understand headset is always a hard cost. When a telecom wants to promote headset, if they want only do like for what, 5,000 units, sounds pretty big as a one cell, but for a telecom in one territory, 5,000 units really doesn't mean anything. That will not really, you know, help the market to go up. So these telecoms, they figured out the best way for them to distribute content is through mobile phone. The first thing they do is always an app on a mobile phone, and then let those end users basically, you know, can just using magic window or like cardboard to watch content. We understand that is not a perfect experience, but basically that is the easiest way for end users to adapt these kind of media. So when telecoms using this way to promote their VR platform, and then also to select specific content that they feel their end users will like, it actually works pretty well, because they start to create their own pool. And of course, they are starting to evaluate what type of headset they want to start to do promote, or like a bundle subscription that you pay for like the 5G, or a premium subscription for our mobile servers or data roaming. And then you can have a headset. And that is the way that they actually let these people and users to become more heavy user compared to just using a mobile phone. And when I try a lot of contents, I have to say, I really enjoy, you know, many contents, such as like during Sundance, I was trying the Book of Distance. It's such a beautiful, amazing story. But the problem is it can easily transfer to a 3-dot version. But the problem is actually the director is actually inside of the story and then talking about, you know, his grandfather's true story, and all the interactive, it's not much, only like, I would say maybe 7 or 8 times of interacting in the story, but the interaction is actually the key point. So when you actually take away those, you know, key point interaction and make it into a linear traditional 360, the story is actually destroyed. And most of the people will feel, you know, why I need to listen to this story? What is the meaningful point that they want to deliver this story in VR? It actually ruined the concept. So when I, you know, try a new project, when I talk to producers, I always, you know, give the true feedback about like, this is the format that I want to take. And I feel there is an opportunity for your content, or I feel that is really risky. I will do a very transparency discussion with the creators just to make sure that, you know, they really want to do it. And also I do see opportunities. Otherwise they create something for me and it still stays on my hard drive, and it just waste of time and also the resource.
Thank you. So my next question is actually taking us 10 years from now, because I would like to understand what's your dream or your vision for this industry, right? Which opportunities, trends, and rather opportunities, which opportunities do you think that are here for us to take, and where would you like this industry to be in 10 years from now?
Well, I'll start. I think I'll probably speak for the whole industry when I say that we're all dreaming of some sort of frictionless metaverse. So it's almost like a persistent virtual universe where I can meet my friends and do meaningful things together that aren't possible in reality. So, and I think we're starting to see some steps. I mean, we've been taking steps towards the metaverse since VR itself, but when everything is consolidated and there's no friction in me going inside a world, meeting friends and doing meaningful things together, I think that would be the dream, and that will unlock so many things, not just technical, but also social, emotional. I mean, I think it will end up absorbing any other medium inside the virtual medium, and which it kind of like the dream in itself is the possibility to say in a serious context things like "meet me by the spaceship," which is something that I'm starting to hear a lot. Things like that during this quarantine, and it's quite fun.
Okay, so for me, I would say, after trying so much VR, I want to say, for me, doing VR is lonely because I have to wear the headset, I have to finish everything, and then once I take it off, I can start to, talk to my friends. Or if we have a bunch of people that we want to try the same content, unless we have multiple headsets that we can all do it at one time. Otherwise, it's basically someone do it first, and then we have to, just follow behind, and then he finished. Don't spoil us. We try it until everybody finishes. Then we start to do the discussion. I think the lonely feeling of doing most of the VR experience that we currently have is also one of the limitations why VR is still not really going up, that so many people wants to jump into the VR world. Yes, we do have a lot of gamers that they are purchasing games, but they're specifically just for game. But when we see games is actually a attractive point for a lot of people. Right now we do see some of the companies, they are actually reflecting to the movie Ready Player One. They are trying to create the platform. And when we talk about platform, we are always talking about a place that, we can all go inside. Right now, we do have, MOR or, other social platform that we can go inside. We can do pitching, we can do showcase. We also can kind of like, shake and mingle with each other. But I think, if we look into, 10 years from now, I think maybe Ready Player One, this movie concept is still far away. It's more than 10 years because that requires too many kinds of technology. But if we really can start to have, this kind of platform as a first step that, people can actually go into a world, and then inside of this world, it's not just like we do meetings together or we try some experiences together. It actually that you have places that you can actually explore, such as like can we have a shopping mall inside of the world as the one segment? And then can we have a game center that is actually we go inside and then start to play games together? And we also have the cinemas that we are watching, the good experiences or doing interactions. Or if there is, any places that we can do conferences, then basically this world will become more, complex and then more fruitful, that the end users, they are not coming here just to do one thing, but they can have, multiple purpose that they want to stay in this world. They want to interact, especially right now. Of course, I can do a WeChat call or WhatsApp call with 100 people, but do we have the capability that in the future we can all join to that world and then through different, territories? And it's not just about a multiplayer experience. It's actually about that we have an appointment there, we gather around, and then we discuss, okay, today what we want to do in this world. Like today we go play games. Tomorrow we are actually enjoying some movies. And then the next day we're actually doing some pitching and conferences. I think I really feel, if we want to make VR bigger, it's not just about like creating great contents, better headsets, bigger bandwidth, cheaper headsets. I think it's also about, can we really, have a world that actually lets end users to, dig into it, and then they can start to define more things that they can do, but not just trying experience or watching, some content. I think that's what I want to see, if after 10 years that we can achieve that.
Okay, so I guess we have 10 years to get there. And I mean, I guess at the end is also, right now we have, sorry. Okay, sorry, my sound. So I guess like right now we have our real life and our digital life, and we exist in both places, like being digital, even our Gmail. But in a way, I guess these technologies may have the power to seamlessly mix our both lives. So it can be just feel more natural the way we interact with both worlds, the real one and the digital one. So, all right, so let's say that's our vision for 10 years from now. What should we be focusing on today so we can actually get there, right? Which will be the road that you envision to get to that place?
Well, I wish I knew, but I think there's clearly, and we're in a situation where we see clearly what are at least the next steps that we have in front of us. The first one, which we're seeing happening around us for the last months, is the tech adoption. I think 4 months ago or 5 months ago, people will laugh at you if you tell them that they will be having drinks over Zoom. And that's happening already. I think some people are saying that we went through 5 years of tech adoption in 3 months. So I don't know exactly how long was that, but there's clearly a lot more tolerance to technology as an enabler, as like for us to enable us to do social things that a lot of people will not even think about in terms of digital. That's super important, and it's one of the most irrational things that is stopping us from having this world, is that people fear technology, or they feel that it's not for them, or there's a lot of things there. Then I think one of the most important things we can do as creators and, well, as part of the industry, is to keep understanding the users. This language is not defined yet. Every technology is gonna change the whole thing again. So now we have hand tracking by Oculus Quest. We need to understand that language now. Again, it's a new thing that we need to explore, and some people are doing incredible prototypes, and so that's gonna happen every 3-4 months. There's gonna be new things, so we need to keep understanding the users. Is not finished at all. We need to spend more time inside the headsets. I think it's something as is related to understanding the users, but it's feeling the pain ourselves. I think we need to understand, and we are the ones who care about VR. And we still feel pain. Sometimes we still feel, sometimes it's too hot, sometimes we start sweating, sometimes, so there's a lot of friction points that we need to understand really well. We need to interiorize in a way. And I think, like in general, we need to have patience. It's a long-term run, more than long-term run, I would say. The short-term sometimes goes up and down. So I'm a survivor of 2 studios that were not like shut down, and then you keep reinventing yourself, you keep finding new spaces to create technology, but we'll need to have patience, starting from the press, starting from the creators, because it's a long-term run, and I don't think that short-term visions are gonna succeed at all.
For me, I want to say, when we are talking about an industry, it's always we have dreamers, and then we have people that is really realistic, only looking to what is really happening in front of the eyes. I would say for myself, I am not a dreamer at all. I am looking into the realistic, what is happening, what is the result, what is the real opportunity that we know if I go there and I find a way, I have a strategy, I can, make it to be affirmed, like making distribution. Like I'm realistic, I see there's demands from telecoms and they're looking for VR contents. So the strategy I have is actually just, to define what are good contents, and then to see if I can represent them, and then to know what my telecom wants, so that we can find a balance, and then to understand what is the market there, what kind of budget that these buyers they have, and then what is the expectation from these producers and creators, and then we find a balance. But still, we see a lot of dreamers in VR. I would say all the creators, all the producers, directors, you guys are all really big dreamers that you want to take this media to more advanced. But I think what I always try to talk to all the producers I know is like, when you have a dream, and still focus on you want to make the dream comes true, but at the same time you also can try to look a little bit to what is happening right now, what is the realistic, what is the result that is actually coming, that the feedback that you actually get back, no matter from buyers, distributors, or film festivals, or the industrial people that and then you can actually cross over to check, okay, right now my dream is here and the realistic is here. Should I downgrade a little bit just to be like one step further, or I want to be like a mile further? I think basically we need both people inside of this industry, that the dreamer will always try to lead the innovation, the technology, and also the direction of this industry goes. And then I think for the realistic people's perspective is, we definitely want to see you guys can make it happen. But the thing is, like, we will also try to tell you guys what is the feedback from the market. So to see if we can provide you some information or knowledge to let you guys to change the direction or strategy or idea, that you actually have a good direction, that your dream goes there, and then we try to follow up and catch up. And that is actually how, you know, the industry that goes further, no matter for, you know, the 5G strategy, no matter for the headset development, and also for what type of contents are, you know, coming out, and what is the content that is, you know, more, you know, popular, what is the content that people don't really make anymore. I think these are basically, you know, what we should focus on. It depends on, yeah, do what you do, but also, you know, listen to the people that you can talk to, and then try to see if those feedback can be consolidated to polish what you're doing, and then you actually go further and better.
Thank you. So I actually think that from a dreamer and from a more realistic perspective, and also I see a message from one of the audience, from Lessa, that she's saying that she agrees, and that's, is it a marathon or a sprint? So I guess like we're looking into long term for this industry to actually figure out some answers to questions that we have, but also find much more questions to answer, and keep evolving. And also I would like to say that you guys have the Q&A. If you want to send any questions, we'll be reading them. We have 10 more minutes to go, so just send them here and we'll be reading them. And also I wanted to thank the guys from Virtual, the online education platform for VR, that's hosting the session and having us here as well. And while I wait for some questions to come up, I would also like to know if you have any projects coming up, or something that maybe it's not a project that you are actually going to do for as a business, but something that you guys are really looking forward to bring to life, or any, I don't know, any secret project that you might have.
First.
All right. So for me, everything I want to bring up is I'm looking for more deals, and we need more deals, because I want to say, you know, even though that the total amount that the licensing fee that it generates from the market, it looks, wow, a lot of people says, wow, it's nice that you actually generate more than, you know, 1.2, 1.3 million in just like, you know, 1 year, 1.5 years. But I want to say is, compared to a project's production and value, that is very little money. And that is all I can do at this moment. So for me, you know, I'm just trying to explore more telecoms. We're pitching to the telecoms in, you know, Singapore, talking to Japan, and also in, you know, Thailand. And we're trying to figure out, do they want to set up a platform? What kind of money that they have to license content? And the next thing I do is like, let them see the entire catalog. Like I have like over 140 studios, and you can rely on me. I'm sure you can find the great contents you need. I think this is what I want to see, you know, keeps happening, and the more the better for the ecosystem. I think right now the current good news is I'm securing 3 deals with the telecoms or companies in France, Germany, and also China. And basically, I think all the 3 new deals will be secured by the end of July, and also like early August. And so I really feel that these telecoms are sustainably doing this, and we have more partners are jumping in from different countries, and this is what I want to see, and, you know, keep working
on. Well, in my case, I cannot really talk about most of the projects. I'm also like really excited, and I've seen a big boost in people coming from outside VR interested in what's happening in VR. Sometimes with proposals, sometimes with ideas that are, but I'm kind of excited about what's gonna happen when these ideas come to life, when this situation of confinement is making people really creative. Obviously in VR, ideas take a long time to happen, so we probably won't see that until the end of the year, at least. But I think there's an interesting energy there, and I hope that I'm part of some of those projects, which is, they are now a bit like, everything is a bit on hold, but still confident. But yeah, I'm excited about those things, how those things materialize. We cannot hear you, Marta. You're mute.
Sorry. So we have some questions from the audience. I don't think we have time to answer them all because we have like 7 minutes, but let's try to answer as many as possible. So first one from Arne. He's saying, what do you think is the biggest obstacle for traditional storytellers moving into VR?
Ignoring the user.
Okay.
I would say to break your mind, because when from traditional, you're always thinking about the 2D frame, but you actually really need to think outside of the box, like why you want to make it into VR, and then can you really think that to design that it's actually a world that people goes in, but not just looking at a screen. Because I think you can refer to a lot of projects, older projects, that when users start to watch, and even for ourselves, we only look at one point, because all the stories only happen from that angle, and then everything else behind is actually not important to the story. And that's actually kind of like the obstacle if for some people when they jump in from traditional to XR VR.
Nice. Next one from Paula. She's asking, what would be the best user-centric design for a VR story that you could imagine? She says, being a dreamer. And here, just quick note, we are running a course in the virtual platform, and probably for August, we're going to do a summer school where we're actually going to have these two guys on it. So that's my answer. You go. You want to Jimmy and Rafa?
It's really hard to answer so quickly, I mean, without knowing the context. Yeah, I'll think about it and I'll send her a message somewhere. It's a long one, I think.
Next one from Andres. We are doing projects in education with VR. Who can we contact if we want to make artistic projects with VR? Well, tough one as well, I guess. Depends on where you are, what you're looking for. I guess there is a lot of meetups.
Try to combine both.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking for like artistic projects, I would come and say like Lucy Reality is a really good studio you can talk to. They actually turn a lot of like really good art piece that into VR, and those projects are really popular and works really well. And then for education, this part really just I would love to know more like what kind of education projects you want to do. Then I can give you more ideas or feedback from the studios that I know, because I think this is a really wide range question that you want to combine two things in one answer.
Next one from Iris. What do you think is the role of the cloud service providers in promoting the VR? Example is AWS Sumerian.
I'm not sure if I understand the answer, but the question, but I think, I mean, we're definitely going towards streaming, which I don't know if it's going to happen in 2, 3, 5 years, but it's almost there. So the cloud is going to become really important, especially the GPU cloud. I don't know if that answers the question.
This one is it's a lot tougher, from my angle. I'm sorry, I don't really know how to answer that.
And so I guess it's time for us to go. So thank you everyone for attending and for staying until the end. And thank you so much, Jimmy and Rafa. I'm looking forward to repeating this again next year, but physically in the real world at Cannes 2021.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
That would be great.
Yeah, thanks to Marta, you actually come up with like the best questions, and you actually lead us very well. Otherwise, me and Rafa, we will just taking 2 mics and then just wrap it or do it. I don't know.
We usually get lost, so thanks for shepherding us.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So I see you next year, and also I hope to see the rest of the audience, all of you guys tomorrow next year at Cannes Festival, real life. So thank you so much for staying till the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.